Well, hello, readers. I am loving today's talk because I am loving today's book that we're going to be talking about, A Healing Touch. But first, before we talk about the book, let me introduce you to my friend, Suzanne Woods Fisher. Suzanne, welcome. And why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I will, and thanks for having me today, Tricia. We go back a long way now.
A long way.
Oh, I think I met you at an ACFW conference a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
But I am Suzanne. I live out in the San Francisco Bay Area. So all of my work, is all in the East Coast or the Midwest, and I have to go flying back east for a lot of things because California obviously doesn't have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
even the Christian bookstores and things like that. And I have a big family, a giant family, which keeps me incredibly busy, but gives me great material for writing.
Yeah.
So, and let me think what else. I'm an author with Revell Books. A little unusual in that I've had all my books with Revell, over
Wow.
40 now, and all with the same editor. In fact,
Really?
both editors. I'm the project editor in the back of the house and the acquisitions editor in the front of the house. So it's been such a gift, and I feel like, oh my goodness, if they go, it's like a three-legged stool. I'm gonna collapse.
Well, it's like you're a unicorn, I think. I don't know of any other author that I know of, first of all, that's had all their books with the same publisher and then that many, and then does the same editors. Yeah.
I know, I know. I feel very, very fortunate, very blessed.
Well, I love it. Okay, so tell us about A Healing Touch. And I will just say that I'm listening to the audiobook and I just started listening this morning. I'm like, I'm going to interview her. I'm listening to the story. I'm loving the story. But all day long, I've been like, what's happening with them? I need to get back to B. I need to see what's going on with her marriage. Oh, no, Doc's marriage. Doc's marriage. I need to get back to Doc, see what's happening with Doc's marriage. And B has this like diagnosis. And Annie, what's going to happen? So I will just saying that to say, I want you to tell more about the book. But these characters, right from the beginning, I care about them. I want to know about them. They are very real to me. They're like real, like a neighbor or a friend. It's not like, oh, I'm reading this book about these people. They seem like people I need to check on. Like, hey, how are you doing after getting that diagnosis? So go ahead and start and telling us a little bit about the story. And then, well, let's start with that. A little bit about the story.
Well, I write most of my books are about the old order Amish. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather was raised plain, so I have a family connection. And they're all set. This is my editor's idea, set in the same town as Stony Ridge. So you
Mm.
see familiar characters kind of come on and off stage and sort of pick up some stories that have been resting for a while. And this story is, I would almost call it more of a hybrid because I have a a doctor who is a doctor to the old order Amish, but she was also raised in in the culture and left to pursue higher education. Her brother is a bishop. She has come full circle and is back. She has quite a backstory, which is in another novel. And as God often just brings us back to face
Mm-hmm.
things, that's what her life has been, as she's kind of been the bridge between the non-Amish world and the Amish world. She's a really interesting person, late 50s, never has had children herself, has been very career focused, and she has a great respect for the way the old order Amish thinks. She understands them, and so she's really open to alternative meds, which I think is true to the Amish. They tend
Mm-hmm.
to not jump in. And I'm not saying they don't use all the benefits of Western medicine, but I think they're more open than most of us are to reflexology,
Yes. Yeah.
acupuncture, a lot of the treatments that would be, or in therapies, maybe outside of the you know Western medicine kind of. So that's kind of a fun part of her because I just like that she believes in the healing process that the person participates with her
Mhm.
in that, and sometimes that means you let them make the decisions about what's going to happen. Okay, she's the one character, and Trisha, one of the reasons you might have enjoyed her, and as well as B. Bennett, another character, is because they are women in their mid, kind of on
Yeah.
the other side of midlife.
I'm 53. I'm 53, so
Yeah, and
yeah.
I actually had an interviewer a couple of weeks ago say, "Why are you writing books about women at that age?" And it's true. It's always fun to have a romance in the 20s because it's so
Mhm.
fresh and new and so full of of blind hope and optimism.
Yes, yeah. Blind hope is a great way to say it.
But but I think there is so much in bringing a character from an older point of view. It's
Mhm.
sometimes to me, it's like you're in a house and you're able to look through different windows to see the house all around, all the different angles. And that brings so much depth to a story. So
Mhm,
I love
mhm.
having the older characters. Okay, that's Doc, and she's basically the main character in the show. But there's a couple of other side characters. There's her assistant is Annie Fisher, no relation. Annie is Amish, has a strong desire to be an EMT, and there are Amish female Amish EMTs.
Wow.
Not that common, but there are. And so I actually took some news stories and I used them to base Annie. The one problem with Annie is that she has a crippling shyness, like
Mm.
crippling shyness. And so for her to be pushing and asserting herself in that world is really her dilemma. And Doc's an overhelper, so she's often overhelping Annie. She's also overhelping her friend B. Bennett.
Yeah.
He is non-Amish. B is actually a former Olympic elite equestrian. And Trisha, I had so much fun interviewing and researching this, talking to people who were in that world because it's fascinating. It's they men and women can compete together, which is really unusual in the Olympics.
Wow.
There's you don't age out. You
Yeah.
can keep
Yeah.
competing. There's so much details. And one thing B. Bennett has done is she's become a breeder with the horse that she had gone to the Olympics with. Breeders, according to my sources, are often hoarders because they
Mm.
hoard genetics. And that's what's happened to Bee. She is moved to Stony Ridge with her husband. Her husband dies suddenly, leaves her a new widow in a new place. She has her horses. She can't let go of anything. She can't let go of her
Mm.
husband's things. She can't let go of him. She can't let go of, and she is absolutely stuck. Gets a diagnosis of breast cancer, which, there's a book called The Body Keeps a Score. And
Yes, and that was even mentioned in there. I'm like, "I have that on my Audible?" Yes. Yeah.
yeah, really significant. I mean, how
Mhm,
often
mhm,
cancer follows a really
mhm.
difficult time in a person's life, and Doc is gonna overhelp her too. So that's a kind of a long answer, but it's 3 women, and they are all 3 in a different place in life.
And it's so interesting. So maybe this is another reason why I related to B because I have a 14-year-old now. Since I think the time she was 5, just wants to have a horse. Every day she's sending us pictures of horses. She wanted riding lessons. We did some Western lessons a couple years ago. This last year, just this year, she started English riding lessons, and she's getting ready to do jumps. And like that's her focus. And I don't even know where this came from. Like we're not ranch people, horse people, but that has always it's just all about the horse and all the pictures of the horses and all the things for the horses. I'm like, honey, when you have your own place, we you get a horse. I mean, you could get a horse, but no, it's she's so determined, and I think bees like it's an important thing. Like for horse people, that's an important thing. It's an extension of them almost, and I can't wait to get more into her character.
Well,
But they
I've read
seem
I've read also that a woman on a horse, it's really quite a moment of power. You're controlling this animal.
mm,
And I ride too. I have ridden and we've had a horse. And there is something about you're controlling this animal. And it's a really significant feeling,
yeah,
to be empowered like that. But there's a phrase, there's just something about a girl and a horse.
yeah, it's so
It's
true. Yeah.
true.
So I love it, and so that's what I mean, just they just seem like such real people, and I think I love what you said about older characters because 'cause they've lived life.
Yeah.
They've had hardship, they've had good things that have happened, they kinda see things differently, and right away, the conflict is there on multiple levels. The conflict, there's marriage conflict, there's what you bring up because it's right at the beginning. I'm not giving too much away, but there's conflict, diagnosis, all these things. And I think it like this is real life. This is me and my friends. You know what I mean? Like so and so's going through this, and you're checking on this person, and how can I pray for this one? And I think as you experience life, it's like you have the joys, but there's this underlying hardship, sadness that you're trying to deal with things. And maybe that's why they seem like real people. I just need to call them and text them and see how they're doing. I'm like, keep reminding myself they're in a novel that I just started. Like, I don't need to call them
Well, thank you.
today.
I really appreciate that from a writer, especially because it means
Hmm.
a lot. I know it's really hard to read a book without editing it, and sort of evaluating it and looking for flaws and things like that. So I
Oh, that's what I love, when I just can just enjoy it, enjoy the story, so I'm completely caught up in this, and so I love it, I love the characters. Okay, so what does it mean with your title, A Healing Touch? Can you give us a hint of the theme of your book?
well, I mentioned that Doc is a belief in healing from within or healing,
Mhm.
partnering in the healing, I guess is how I would call it. So I think, for example, would be that she needs to enter into her healing and be a part of it. It's not just the treatments she's has to go
Mhm.
and undergo surgery and radiation, but Doc really wants her to kind of really look within and use this as an opportunity. And I'm not saying all cancer has a reason. I'm not saying that everybody who gets cancer has something else they need to work on, but
Mhm.
for me, she did. And so Doc sets her up with an Amish woman named Fern Lap, who is like, we all need a Fern Lap in our life. She's just absolutely, a woman of few words, cuts to the chase. I mean, for example, Bee can't let go of her husband's things. They had just moved
Mhm.
into the house and the garage. She can't even put the car in because it's filled with her husband's boxes. And she asked Fern how she handled her own husband's death and what did she do with his things. And Fern said, true to the Amish, they were all auctioned off. And this bee, who really doesn't know much about the Amish, could not believe that
Mhm.
her husband's things would be gone, that they'd be out of the house. But Fern's point of view is someone, he doesn't need them, someone else does. And
Mhm.
that kind of healing that little by little started changing Bee's thinking to where she could start to release some of that.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that there is that theme of healing through the different characters. I mean, we definitely have B is going to be facing the physical, but I think, I mean, I'm just beginning the book. I'm only like, I don't know, 4 chapters in, but I can see there's going to be different layers of healing with the characters. Did you explore that? I mean, I'm sure purposely, but talk a little bit about that with Annie and with Doc too.
Well, one thing we didn't mention, there's a baby on the cover of this book, and it's
Yeah,
an Amish woman holding it. And the irony is that's really not the Amish woman's baby.
yeah, yeah,
That was a little bit of a push pull with my editor and just thinking, huh, that isn't quite where I thought the cover would go. But
yeah.
respect their art director very much. And so there's a little baby that arrives on Doc's doorstep. Turns out this baby is the like a second it's the infant of a second cousin to the husband, and the second cousin has abandoned the baby, but they know enough that they could trace it to the family.
Mm,
The husband, these or Doc's husband, is the only relative in the state. So all of a sudden, they are offered the opportunity to be emergency foster care parents. And this is all based on a true story of a friend of mine who gave me
wow.
permission to share this. And I changed a lot of the details, but I walked through this whole experience with my friend, and it's just it's just such a powerful thing, adopting, fostering, relinquishing, so much of it. It's so complicated.
Mhm.
And this little baby was in their home for a few months. Doc was so reluctant. She's a super hard workaholic, did not see herself in her late 50s as having an infant. Her husband is just over the moon, loving this, takes a leave of absence from work. And it kind of shows cracks in their marriage too.
Mm,
He's ready to slow down, and she's
mhm,
not at all. And in fact, all the books about Doc will be about this idea of, can she slow down? Will there be a point
mhm,
where she can start to really let go a little bit? But through this story, and I don't want to give too much away, but I think the baby, true to my friend's story, was an absolutely charming, easy to live with, perfect
mhm.
little infant. Almost had the feeling like he was always overstaying his house guest days, like he knew.
Yeah.
Which made it almost harder. But I feel like I don't want to give away too much of the story, but it is really a profound story. So,
Mm.
and and very much of a moving experience for them to open their hearts in their home.
I love that. We adopted, so when we adopted, she's 14 now, but I had 3 adult children and a 15-year-old, and we adopted a baby. And it's just like this whole new thing. I mean, we had babies. I had my babies in my teens and then in my 20s, and baby in my almost 40. It was like a new experience. Just the joy, the fun that you just get to cherish kind of those moments where yeah, before, it was just like getting through the day. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. And we just, well, November is National Adoption Month. So this is a perfect book to be talking about. In fact, just earlier today, we were at a press conference and we met the governor of Arkansas for National Adoption Month. She wanted some adoptive families to come. So this has all been in my whole day has been filled with this. So I love
That's
that that
great.
theme is in this book too.
Yeah, that's great. My daughter-in-law's adopted. I remember meeting her and just feeling so thankful, like almost a chill down my spine that a teenage mom made a different decision because of a
Mm,
grandmother. And I'm so thankful.
yeah, I love it. Okay, so Um, I know as soon as this book is done, I'm going to want to know more about the characters, more about is there going to be more coming? Tell me all the details.
Well, it's kind of fun. I just turned in the manuscript and I was really pleased because I only needed about 5 minutes of revisions, which is amazing. And I'm
Wow.
really happy with that. And it's a great it's such a fun story to have a lot of non-Amish characters
Mhm,
because
mhm.
they're looking at the Amish in a way you can talk about them where you wouldn't if you were had just all your
Right,
characters Amish. You can
right.
just actually be an outsider looking in. So Doc is on this mission to try to slow down. Her husband is pushing and pushing her. It obviously didn't get fixed completely in book one, but in book two, her husband has gone around her and submitted applications to the state of Pennsylvania to have brand new, spanking brand new medical doctors come to an underserved area to serve out their residency and have their loans forgiven.
Oh, wow.
Doc did not know about this and suddenly is now this supervising two brand new doctors, one at the top of the class and one at the bottom of the class.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's really a fun story. How they kind of morph into the work and how she adjusts and all that. And Annie Fisher is still a strong part of this book too.
Oh, I love it. Okay, it's so fun because I mean, you talk about your books are set in the same place and
Yeah,
characters keep showing up and I have a series like that set in Montana that's the same. And I feel like it's my second life, right? Don't you feel like I don't know that they're your friends and neighbors and that you understand what's going on there and you get a check in once in a while. And it is so amazing that you have these stories, same place, same location, but they're all coming out of your mind. Like they're all just made up characters based on true people. So what is it like just to continue to build on this community, just to see old friends, to have new challenges? Because it's not very common that we get to have that continue
I
in a
know.
series.
It's funny because we all long for a small town in our hearts.
Hmm,
Even if
hmm.
it's a city, we want that feeling of being known, a feeling of people caring and a community and a net to save you if you
Yeah.
trouble. So, in some ways, even my non Amish books, my contemporary fiction, have the same tone, a little bit of an
Hmm, hmm.
outsider in a small town and trying to fit
Yeah.
in. But I would say for the Amish books, I have based the bishop on a bishop I've met in Ohio who Trisha, he's just one of the brightest people I've ever known in my life.
Mm.
To give you an example, he had a delegation from North Korea visit his home to learn farming techniques. Yeah. I mean, he is
Wow.
amazing. And
I
I
wonder if
feel
I've
like
met him.
if I could be Amish,
Yeah.
I think I could be Amish under this bishop
Yeah.
because he has that open mind and open heart, old order Amish, true to everything, not a progressive church, and yet he's just quite a remarkable person. And I wanted to create a bishop because so many books, the bishop is this stereotypical patriarchal tough guy, blah 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 kind of thing. It's like, no, they're not all like that. Some are, but not all.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny because my friend I was visiting a friend, Sue, in Ohio, and she's like, "You have to stop making the bishops mean, and you have to stop making the bishops." She goes, so we drove around with a friend that took us to different places. We met this one man, and we talked about he wanted to know about my World War II books, and we were talking about World War II. Like he was just filled with knowledge about history and all
Curiosity.
this stuff.
Yeah.
I did not even imagine that. And when we left, she goes, "Did you like him?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "He was a bishop." And I'm like, she's like, "See, you cannot keep making your bishops all the difficult people."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing. I think we do get those stereotypes
Mhm.
in books.
Yeah, very much. I think a lot of one size fits all. And
Uh-huh.
that's just not true. Honestly, they are, I think that's the fun about continuing to write about them is that they're always surprising you. I mean, the things that come out of the mouths of some of them, they're just surprising people. I get a kick out of them.
Yeah. So let's talk about research because I know you talk about, talking to people and visiting them, and building friendships. I think sometimes people are surprised when we have Amish friends that open their doors and they talk to us. And not everybody. There's some that definitely don't want us, to talk to them. But talk about some of just the research that has gone into this book, especially, but any of your books.
Well, I mean, here's an example where I when you go to Lancaster, when you go to Shipshewana, when you go to Berlin and
Hmm.
Morrisburg, you're going to places where the Amish are interacting quite a bit with the
That's true.
non-Amish, and so you're meeting the types of people that it's quite easy. Homes have little handcraft shops attached to them, and they're in business to sell, and on and on. I actually, for a couple of books ago, I went to the middle southern part of Tennessee, which is this extremely conservative Amish area.
Hmm.
Really, really different, and stopped at a number of homes. And it was just fascinating to see this was not people that were open, but
Hmm.
they were in business for selling because they're very self sufficient. So they did have little storefronts there. They would answer questions briefly, but it was just a completely different
Hmm.
vibe, and the homes, they were obligatory, but there was no flowers, they were well cared for, but nothing to ordain them at all, which is really different from Lancaster, which the flower gardens are pretty
Hmm.
amazing. So anyway, I think just going to these different areas is
Hmm.
fairly important to just understand, you know, another areas, the western part of Pennsylvania, the Big Valley. There's just so many super super conservative, very different clothing, different barns, things like that. It's just a whole different world. So like I said, there's just not one size fits all.
Yeah.
I think for a healing touch, I am not in the medical profession. I felt very conscious of that. I chose examples that I researched well, that were pretty common. I didn't
Hmm.
try to sound like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I put a caveat in the book, but hopefully I at least represented it clearly. That's my
Yeah, and I love that she visits homes.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, Tricia,
Yeah.
because that's why in the book too, why these residents want to work with her,
Mhm, mhm,
because she's a strong believer in home visits. She feels she can learn more about someone's home
mhm.
and their life and what's going on with them than by being in their home than if 15 minutes in the doctor's office. So she's a strong believer in making house calls.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a I mean, I love that. I love the thought that someone can come in and check on you. Now, we care for my grandma, she's 95. Her doctor does come and do visits and house calls. And we're just able to talk with her because it's we can't get grandma out, right? So the doctor will come, the nurse will come and do house visits, and so the dogs are running around. It's just like they
Yeah.
get to see what real life is. It's so cute. She's like, "You're doing such a good job." And we had grandma in like a hospital bed, and then we had like a queen size bed for guests against the wall. And she's like, "I think you have room for two more grandmas over there. I'll bring them over." And I'm like, "No, one grandma, taking care of one grandma is enough for me." But it is that special thing. I mean, the dogs are jumping. I'm like, "Get the dog," try to get the dogs out. She's like, "Don't worry about it." But it is. It's like it's different than sitting in a room where they just check in with you. It's more personal. They could kind of see the environment. They could see how you're tending or what different things are going on. And I like that.
Yeah, again, it's kind of back to a lot of the things we all. That's I think sometimes why the people read the Amish. It calls to us of the life we wish we had or would like to have, but it's kind of I don't know. Medicine is just changing so much, but
It's
not
so
for your
true.
grandmother. I'm happy for her.
Not for my grandmother. Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about the faith elements in it. And I think you talked about lots of people might read Amish, like they might just go to Walmart or just go to the library and read Amish books that maybe might not pick up other Christian fiction because they do like it's like almost going back in time. It's the slowness, it's the community and the families. What faith elements are in this book or in other books, and why is that important to you?
It is really important to me, not in the way of whacking someone in the head with a Bible,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
in the way of just inviting God into the conversation. And so for B. Bennett, that's an example of someone who maybe was dormant in her faith and
Hmm.
hadn't really felt the need for it until she's facing a lot of crisis, which is pretty much most people,
Yes,
And I think having people that are willing to kind of push a little bit and show what a life of faith looks like. How other books I've even had, I mean, for example, the bishop, and he doesn't have a huge role in this book, but he will kind of flow in and out of scripture in his mind, and I just love that. How do you use scripture? I
hmm,
mean, I think we need to know that it's meant to be really almost we marinate in it and
yeah,
make it a part of us. So I really believe strongly in Christian fiction, and I hope it's just only growing and growing and growing. There's still so many good books to be written by lots of different
absolutely.
authors.
Yes, there's so many new authors out there.
Mhm.
I'm always surprised, like on avid readers, when someone says, "What's a favorite author, a book you enjoyed?" And I'm like, I don't even recognize half of these names.
Yeah.
It's just amazing because it's like we're in the we're in the old writers club or something. I was sitting at a table at ACFW this year with Deb Rainey and Angie Hunt and Gail Roper and Mark Miner and Preston Maples, and I'm like, we're the old table, like we're the ones that have been there for a long time, and it's wonderful to see in comparison to when I go to the Realm Makers conference, and 80% of the writers there, it's like 500, 600 people, are under the age of 40.
Oh my
I mean,
goodness.
just blossom. Yeah, so it's wonderful to see the growth in Christian fiction, and that they could come back and read their favorites, like books from you, or they could try these new authors. I just love that there's so much variety now.
I know, and then I worry about the authors I haven't heard from in a long time. I just think, where are some of them? What's happened? I worry about
Yes,
them.
I know. You can check on in on them. All
Yeah.
right. Now, speaking of books and authors, I always love to in an interview just ask just what is a novel that you've really enjoyed,
Well,
Christian novel.
so last night actually, my husband's out of town, so I picked up a book that I've been meaning to read and really enjoyed. I got into it quickly, and it's by Becky Wade. It's her.
Oh yeah.
She actually has now moved into independent publishing.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I I hadn't seen it, but I was able to get a copy, and I think it's called Memory Lane. And I was reading it sort of as a writer reading, which is what I meant by I think you're smart to read audio because you wouldn't be quite
Yeah.
as looking. But I was just noticing a lot of narrative, a lot of detail that she puts in, and the goodness of that is you literally know what the room looks like, what the person looks like, what the just his age, his tiredness on his face, on and on. And I thought, oh, this is because I mean she's sort of a big name. She's really done well.
Yeah.
I haven't read a lot of her books, but I can see where she's made a splash for herself.
Yeah, and I think as authors, I learn from sometimes like, "Ooh, I like how she did that," or
Yeah.
"Ooh, that was a good transition," or I read a Denise Hunter one, a novel proposal, and it had like the main character was a novelist, and it had like a writing tip at the beginning of every chapter. I'm like,
Oh, clever.
writers need to someone who wants to write a book needs to read this book to figure out how to plot a novel because it was so good, so well done, and I think that's so fun when you pick something up that's completely different than the way I write, and they're like, "Oh, I like this. Oh, wow, that's a creative way to do that," which just shows that stories can be shared in so many ways. And we go to writers' conferences, and I mean, we hear this is the way you write, and then you read stuff that's completely almost different than the ways we were taught in the olden days, and it's fun. It's fun to see just the creative ways people are writing.
I'm in a book club with a mother-daughter book club. So, and a lot of the daughters are in their 20s and early 30s. And we actually don't read Christian fiction. It's really pulls you out of your comfort zone.
Mm,
It is so good for me to do this because I'm
hmm.
listening to how young people are thinking. And Trisha, that the nonfiction, non-Christian fiction, there is so much room for who knows what, writing by
Hmm.
verse, writing There's no punctuation. I mean, it's just like, oh my goodness, this would never fly. So it's good. It's good to stretch.
I love that idea of that book club. I will say my adult children, they're in their 30s, read so much more than I do. They are audiobooks and reading, and I'm like, it's actually, and like I said, that writers conference where 80% of them are under the age of 40. It's refreshing to see that people are still excited about books and are reading a lot of books.
Mhm. I'm about to start Tea with Elephants by Robin Jones
Oh,
Hill. Have you
yay.
started that?
Yeah.
Have you read that yet?
I've started it.
Yeah.
I start a lot of books as I interview people, but my audio Audible is full of all these books. But then I'll get into one and just like go. So probably this weekend, I'm gonna finish your book and just go on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. And I've been around Robin a lot and
You
heard
wrote
a
a
lot
book
of her
together.
stories. Yeah, we written a couple books together.
Wow.
But I heard her tell her stories because we spend so much time together that I'm like, oh, this is that story. Oh, and I love that her true stories are woven in there. Yes, so
Mhm.
fun. Oh, okay. We could talk all day, but where can readers go and get more information about you and all your books?
Well, I think my website's a great place to be, www.suzannewoodsfisher.com, and you'll see a pop-up menu for my newsletter. And that is where I really take good care of my readers. And I
Mm,
really do a lot of exclusive giveaways. Um, I have a Friday uplift that is not a hard sell of my books. It's just like a little bit of life and
mhm.
some suggestions and a recipe. And what's funny is the recipe is the most down clicked on link.
Yeah,
People are just looking for good things to try. So I try to take very good care of the people that are so good to me. So I would suggest, so there I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all that. I like to point people to my website.
I love that. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for being here. And again, the book's A Healing Touch. It's so good. You guys are going to love it. So make sure you go and check that out. But thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Trisha.